Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about David Milroy's play, Windmill Baby. So this is a one-person play, a one-woman play specifically. It says here in the characters list, the play is written for one female actor who plays the following characters and voices. Old Maymay, who's an elderly Aboriginal woman in her 70s. This is the sort of primary figure of the play. She narrates these experiences of her youth on this cattle station, I guess. It seems to be cattle rather than sheep, although I think sheep was the predominant crop or the predominant sort of cash animal in much of Australian history, but I may be wrong about that. So old Maymay, then there's young Maymay, an Aboriginal homestead laundry girl, late teens, boss of the station, early 30s, one man's mum, Melvern, a stockman in his early 20s, Auntie Darabala, a wise old Aboriginal woman in her 80s, Sally, an Aboriginal homestead cook, late teens, Mrs., the station boss's wife, early 20s, Oneman, a crippled Aboriginal gardener in his early 20s, Billy Gogo, an old Aboriginal wiseman in his 80s, Skitchum, the mongrel camp dog, and Dr. Gillespie, an old white doctor. I'm not typically a huge fan of plays like this where you have one actor who sort of plays multiple roles. Sometimes they're good, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Windmill Baby isn't bad. It didn't bother me that much. It's also worth noting that I read this rather than saw it. And so reading it allows that sort of these are different characters with different voices and they're interacting with one another. It's much easier to envision that as multiple people interacting when you're reading, whereas when you're seeing it on stage and it's one person doing these different voices and characters. So that might change my opinion of it if I actually saw it performed. So this is a play, to me, that seems primarily to be about finding one's place in the world, right? So old Maymay comes back to this station where she had spent at least a portion of her youth, and she's sort of working through her memories of being there. And the memories seem to largely revolve around, again, this thematic of finding one's place, of being where one is meant to be, right? So one of the first things we learn is that the boss of this station brought his wife out. Like we don't know where she's from exactly, but she's clearly not from the bush, not from this sort of arid, inhospitable area where this station seems to be. She is quite a delicate person. And what old Maymay says is, love does funny things to a man. The next day we seen the mail truck kicking up the dust. Melvern was a proper bush blackfella and hadn't seen many trucks before, so he grabbed a lasso in one hand, whip in the other, and hid behind the wood heap. The truck pulled up and there she sat, the little wax candle. That's the missus. No matter, I whipped the rugs into butter because all that sun and dust had made her nose as red as a beetroot. The missus weren't made for this country, but love does funny things to a woman. So I mean, this is the first sort of instance of someone being out of place, right? The missus does not really belong in this sort of harsh frontier type environment. She is not constitutionally suited to it. She's not that strong. She's very pale, etc., etc. So she's not going to do well in the hot sun, etc., etc. And so that idea of being out of place is introduced. A little bit later, we have discussion of this character named Windmill, who is the oldest of twins. His brother, Tumen, died on delivery. Windmill survived, but he was crippled. And the previous boss of the station had sort of supported him and helped sort of make sure he got food, he got taken care of, etc., etc. But the new boss, the current boss, is not interested in doing that. And so he basically says, give Windmill to the missionaries. Let them take care of him. His wife intercedes on Windmill's behalf, and the boss is convinced to allow Windmill to stay as long as a job can be found for him. And they find him a job as gardener. And it turns out he's really excellent at it. He's an extremely good gardener who does a really, really good job raising these crops and sort of getting this very harsh landscape to flourish. The problem becomes that Windmill and the missus become very close, and they apparently have an affair, which is a problem because she is white and he is Aboriginal. And she is married to a white man with a severe temper. You can probably tell where this is going. So as all of this stuff is happening, and basically, so when she is going to have her baby, they convince Windmill that he needs to leave, because if the baby looks Aboriginal, he is going to be the natural target of suspicion. And so he agrees to leave, but then rather than actually leaving, he ends up dying in his garden. It's not clear whether this is suicide or sort of death by a broken heart, something like that. So while all of that is going on, May has her own life, her own relationship with Malvern, the I forget, head stockman, something like that. I forget exactly what his job title is. In the cast list, he's just listed as stockman, but I think he becomes the lead stockman or something like that. So they get married. They have a somewhat turbulent relationship, but overall, she's relatively happy. When the baby is born, though, the doctor, who's white, basically takes May aside and is like, you gotta get this baby out of here. Like, I don't care. Go take it and kill it, give it to the missionaries. I don't care what you do with it, but you got to get this baby out of here because this baby is clearly Aboriginal. And if the boss finds out, he is going to kill this woman. And so May agrees. Basically, it's like she takes this baby. that the missus had really, really hoped for. And the plan is to take it away and basically give it to the missionaries. But that isn't really what happens. Like, it's slightly unclear to me from May's description of what occurred. I mean, what we know is that she is taking this baby across the river toward the mission where the missionaries are, and the baby is washed away. The baby drowns in the river. What isn't clear is how much that was against May's will, or whether this was sort of a, I'm giving this baby back to the spirits kind of situation. There's a little bit of, I mean, this isn't necessarily a play very strongly run through with traditional Aboriginal beliefs, but there is some indication that this was sort of a deliberate choice to sort of return this baby to the ancestors, to the spirit world, whatever it is. I don't know enough about Aboriginal spirituality and religion to be 100% sure. So it's not 100% clear what exactly, or why the thing that happens. Whether it was an accident or whether it was not necessarily a deliberate choice as such, but whether it was a choice that allowed a thing to happen. Not 100% clear. But I want to read you the end of it. And I guess in order to sort of understand the end bit of it, I need to go back and briefly summarize this story that Windmill tells, which is about this pumpkin that mocks a potato for growing in the dirt and for being dirty. And then one day a flood comes and the pumpkin is washed away and the mud is washed away, and all that is left is the potato washed clean by the floods. The potato survives despite the mockery of the pumpkin. So the play ends, Windmill Baby ends with May addressing the spirit of her own dead daughter, who is stillborn. He says, "Ruby, I had to leave this station, and there's a lot that I never got to tell you. Your daddy passed on now, but I want you to know he was a good man and a good stockman, and it was him that gave you your name from that ruby stone. That ring is long gone. I know a lot of years have passed, but I never stopped thinking about you, and I've always loved you. Now, Windmill, I know you couldn't go to the mission, and I know you couldn't stay on that station, but when you left, a lot of goodness went with you. I want you to know that when Windmill Baby came, I also had nowhere to go. I had no choice either. I wish things could have been different. I'm sorry." Then she takes a quilt from her bag and holds it. This would be the quilt that May and the missus made for the Mrs. Baby. The shadow of the windmill, she stares at the windmill. "Windmill Baby, we never got across that river, but I did my best. I haven't got much to give you now, but here's that quilt me and your mummy made for you. I never got to keep my promise to your daddy, but maybe he come for you tonight, and he can tell you that story. You know, that potato one?" And she puts the quilt down. So, I think it's a very good play. I'm not a huge fan of the one-person format, as I said, but basically I think it's a good play.